Recording. There we go. And welcome everybody to our weekly moment where we talk about how we can humanize transformation. And what do we mean when we talk about humanizing transformation? Well, we're really talking about bringing humanity into business and work. And given that transformation and change is pervasive in every single organization these days because of the world that we live in, humanizing change and transformation is a super important thing and critical to success, as we have found out increasingly over the last 10 years. So what I'm going to do today is we're going to talk about the very thing that helps us humanize transformation. So it's really all about mindset, isn't it? And I want to just share with everybody maybe a nice little light, kind of maybe a shorter than normal weekly moment today, but I want to share 5 things about mindset that we should all know. And it would be brilliant if we already all do know these things, but equally, I'm going to share these things with us. And it would be great at the end of today's session to see whether there's 1 or 2 things in here that might be new to you, and you might be able to consider how you can use these elements and deploy them within your own change and transformation. And that, again, might not necessarily be just the end users that you're working to serve. It might be your colleagues and those around you that are in the practice of change, or it might indeed be the leaders around the change that are the sponsors, or those people that are really responsible for delivering budget and approvals and so on and so forth. So just thinking about it in those 3 audiences: the leaders above, your peers and the practitioners around you, as well as the more obvious end users. Alrighty, so always starting with a quote, and this quote is a really easy one. It is what it is. Once our mindset changes, everything on the outside will change along with it. Who we are in terms of our mindset is very closely aligned to our identity. Who we are as an identity is so much about our mindset, and our mindset, of course, is our belief system. It is the way we think. It is the things that have happened in our experience of life from childhood all the way through to today. It's the values by which we live our lives and operate within our work environment. And also, because it's so intrinsically connected to identity, a lot of mindset work is also about habits. It's also about unconscious practice, because when we're in the unconscious practice, what we're able to do is we're able to understand habitually what we're doing in terms of norms, but we're also able to uncover that invisible why we are doing something. Where is the origin story of this behavior or this type of language that I'm using? Mindset, so incredibly important to everything that we do around change and transformation. So without further ado, we're a few minutes over the hour. What are these 5 things that I would like to share with you today? Well, let's have a look at them. Well, the first thing is this. I want to talk about where people normally start when it comes to mindset. And they normally start with the work of Carol Dweck, talking about fixed or growth. That's absolutely fine. We can see on the left-hand side of this screen some of the kind of behaviors, some of the manifestations of a human that has a growth mindset. And on the right-hand side, the opposite for a fixed mindset. Why have I put this slide up? Because it is important for us to recognize that we are not one or the other. We're always somewhere between the 2. And yes, it is fantastic when we have got individuals that are, most of the time towards the left-hand side. But we do need to recognize that there are triggers that put us into either the fixed or the growth mindset. So it's a spectrum. And what we want to understand is where people are at any given moment on the spectrum. So if we're thinking about a change project or a transformation project, and we're looking at the leaders above, we're looking at our colleagues, our peers, we're looking at the end users, what we want to start doing and observing and talking about is how we're feeling and where our belief system is, and where are we on this spectrum between growth and fixed. Observe the words and the actions of people around us. I've just come off a meeting with some practitioners, and we were talking about a very specific project and a particular leader who kept being triggered into a fixed mindset just around this project. And, you know, how we can move into supporting that leader in terms of conversation to get them to make visible what's invisible, which is really valuable for us, but also valuable for the individual as well. And how that completely and utterly turned around a project that was becoming really, really complex and really struggling. So focusing on the triggers when we are designing change and transformation is far more important than saying, right, okay, what we need to do here is we need to get this department into a growth mindset. That's, you know, that's not the way to do it. So thinking about how we ourselves and the people around us get triggered into either a fixed or growth mindset. It's the triggers that we want to focus on, not necessarily the end. The end bits, the manifestation of who we are, really is the data that we use to then uncover what the triggers are. And it's the triggers that we start to change as opposed to the end bits. And then, of course, the second thing to know about mindset is, wow, we're in somewhere between a complex and a complicated world now, right? If we look at the Cynefin model. So we're no longer in an obvious place. And when you think about, you know, decades ago, when change and transformation and project management as methodologies and practices were designed and were created, they were predominantly within obvious environments where the challenge or the opportunity was a known, and the journey towards getting there was also known. So we were able to actually map an obvious path towards that. Not saying that the results would be obvious, because, you know, that in itself brings complexity. But the key thing is, now we're in a world where we might be in a place that we are able to understand the challenge, so that is a known, but we don't know how to get there. There are multiple ways of getting there. So that's complicated. But we might also be in a complex environment where we don't really know what there looks like, as well as there are so many different ways to move. So that might be, it might be more generic. So it might be a vision for an organization to scale in terms of growth. We don't necessarily know what that might look like, because we can grow in different ways. So we'll experiment our way there. And that's an example of complex versus complexity. So modern mindset is something for us that we've been working on over the last decade, that allows us to work with an individual, with a team, with a group, and eventually with an entire organization, to understand the uniqueness of every individual vis-a-vis these modern mindsets. So it's not about a culture as a single thing, because a culture is not an asset. A culture is not a single thing. A culture is the sum of every individual's particular mindset. So, you know, when people say our culture is really open, well, actually, your culture is not open. Who are the individual mindsets that are demonstrating open behaviors and have belief systems around the value of being open and transparent, etc., etc. So we just need to just dig down a little bit under the radar of this kind of culture conversation into mindset and belief. So the modern mindsets are the 7 mindsets that we can see in front of us here. And just a couple of things, because today is not about this. Today is about 5 different things. But the key thing to remember is this: each and every one of us has strength somewhere in these 7 mindsets. You know, having profiled and worked with thousands of leaders all over the world across every imaginable sector, I can honestly say to you that I have never worked with an individual that doesn't possess some unique strength in these areas. So understanding these 7 modern mindset dimensions, really understanding them and getting to know where we have strength today is really important. Why? Because of this. Human transformation is really in the realms of positive psychology. So we're looking for strength-based actions. We're looking for strength to start. We're looking for the good news stories to get on the journey, to motivate people and inspire them and bring them along with us. So we're looking for strength to begin with. Of course, there will be development throughout these 7 dimensions, but let's see where we have strength. Why? Because when we have strength, we can create a ripple. What does that mean? If we have strength in an area of the, in our belief system, in our values, in our norms that are specific in some of these areas of modern mindset, we can start role modeling. We can start role modeling them out to our peers, to the leaders around us, to the users. And that generates trust because people follow. Culture shifts by looking up. And what that means is people, individuals are looking up to see, can I trust this? Can I believe this? What does that even look like? Do I have permission? So many different things that individuals look up to see, and what they want to see is the manifest of all of these things that culminate in trust. So if we've got a strength in one of these dimensions, we want to think about how do we externalize it? How do we role model it? And we can use the techniques of habit to role model these elements. When we role model, we create a ripple effect because others trust and others follow. And just a point here to share, to clarify, when I say followership, the Dilyn Way framework is not about people following us like sheep. It's not about blind followership. It's about, I will follow my pathway because I trust that you are following yours. And that's really, really important. So it's really understanding the culmination of uniqueness. And the thing that we want to do eventually when we're working with individuals and when we're working with teams is we want everybody to try and get to a point of consistency. Because when we get to a point of consistency, specifically around leadership across these 7 dimensions, in the eyes of others, the individual is seen as a modern leader. So if we've got manifestations of habits and belief systems and behaviors across all of these 7 dimensions out to the world, we are rippling out the understanding that we are a modern leader. And that's really important because the value and the power of strength and followership that brings, as opposed to just a strength area in one particular element of these 7 mindsets, is super, super important. These mindsets are dynamic. They're constantly changing. So it's important for us in our practice to understand where we are now vis-a-vis these 7 mindsets, and to start to be consciously aware of how these mindsets are changing, because the world around us is changing in terms of technology and economics and environment and climate and humanity, all of these things that are contributing to that complex, complicated kind of ecosystem. So we want to really make sure that we're consciously aware of how dynamic these mindsets are and how we ourselves are introducing them into the practice of our own self-development and professional development. If you'd like to know more about these 7 mindsets, we've got some videos that you can watch. We've got some really good materials that we can share with you. So just let me know or let us know, respond to the emails that I send out, or even pop it into the chat here. I'm more than happy to give you some more information on that. But do think about these 7 mindsets for yourself. Think about these 7 mindsets and how they're manifesting at a leadership level, at a peer level, as well as at an end user level in the change and transformation that you're working on. Because what you will do is you will start to uncover some absolute golden diamond nuggets to support how you might be able to humanize that change. The third thing I want to talk to you about today is this. We have 3 minds. And it's important for us as modern leaders. It's important for us when we are bringing humanity into business and work, humanizing change, regardless of whether our end users are within a corporate system or our end users are members of the public, citizens in the community, understanding that we've got 3 minds. We have our conscious brain and our unconscious brain. And that gives us thought and creativity and innovation. And it also unconsciously gives us our habits and our origin stories. But our heart also has got neurons. And back in 2010, it was first recognized that our heart also has a brain element to it. It's got neurons on it. And our heart gives us feeling. Our heart gives us energy. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. The head and the heart brains work together very closely. So for us to understand these 2 in our own leadership provides resilience, provides us with courage, provides us with that ability to lean into innovation and walk a different path to other people, because we are working with our head and our heart in sync. And understanding when they might not be in sync around us means that we might be able to identify, is it heart that's out of sync? Is it head that's out of sync? Talk to you about that in a moment too. But just quickly before I move on to the next slide, our gut also has neurons. I think it's about 100 million neurons in our gut. And what does that mean? Well, sometimes when we are in our own development stage, when we are working on a project or program, there might be that gut feeling that we have. And the thing to remember about your gut is that the element of your gut is only a yes or no answer. So the head and the heart work with the complexity of ideas and feelings and creativity and all of that kind of stuff. But our gut will give us a yes or a no answer. So if you are feeling a little bit icky about an element of change and transformation, a conversation you're about to have with a leader or a colleague around this, or a design, if you are feeling a bit icky about it and you want to know, is it a yes or a no? Should we do this or not? You can go into your gut and ask that question, and your gut will give you a yes, no answer. It can only give you a yes, no answer. It can't give you a maybe. And techniques that allow us to really start to listen to these elements are, of course, building and developing intuition. And intuition is really starting to become known and introduced into leadership development programs, into change management initiatives, etc., because it is it is an absolute kosher data point, intuition. As long as it is controlled, bias, and devoid of ego. Super, super important. The three minds, if you haven't delved into this world and its potential value and power to your role within change and transformation, or indeed to help you in the design and delivery and the frictionless transformation journey of others, really, really, really important element. And I mentioned coherence. So when we're thinking actually about the heart and the head specifically together, what we really want to do is we really want to generate a sense of coherence. Now think about this. We've got a change project or program happening, and there's a lot of frustration, there's a lot of distrust, there's a lot of fear in the people that we want to bring on the journey with us. What that means is that there is an incoherence between their heart waves and their brain waves. If that is the case, what that means is the likelihood of them coming on the journey with us is going to be reduced. The risk of change will be increased, because when we're incoherent in terms of those two brain frequencies, then we are likely to be tapping on the door of fight, flight, or freeze, which lets out all of those chemicals around survival. And what does that do? It builds resistance to change. So we want to really, right at the very start, as humanized transformation practitioners, is to start to get into and understand and observe where there is coherence, and potentially ask why. Best place to start is always with ourselves. So coherence is exactly that. When our heart and our head brains are working coherently in terms of their frequency, their wave frequency. And you know, a lot of people say, I'm not necessarily getting a vibe with this. It is vibe, it is energy, it is frequency. And the good thing now is, with neuroscience, we've got data to back it up, which is absolutely fantastic. And that picture, by the way, the yellow elements of that picture are the heart brain, where the neurons are. Something else that is a really powerful thing is that, specifically for ourselves, is if we are able to be in coherence with our heart and our brain, it increases our capacity for decision making, and we can increase our likelihood for entering into a state of flow. And we've all got an experience somewhere in our lives where we've gone into flow. And what do I mean by that? You know, where you've kind of like, you zoned out and it's like, I don't even know what happened. Where did the last 3 hours go? I just can't believe it's been 3 hours since I started here. I've just been so in the zone. Athletes talk about it an awful lot. What that is that is when their brain and their heart are in coherent frequencies, which is brilliant. There is a gentleman called Alan Watkins, Dr. Alan Watkins. If you go onto YouTube, you will see that he talks and he does a lot of work on coherence at a leadership level. So he brings coherence into leadership development. And he talks to examples of where a leader in a high stress environment blocks off their ability to make decisions. They are unable to make decisions because they're in a stress environment. And it's simply because they're incoherent. And what he does is he uses techniques like breath or calmness or, lots of different techniques. And as soon as he gets the individual back into coherence and asks them specific questions or complex questions, suddenly they're able to respond. So it's a really important thing for us to understand in the world of humanizing transformation, which is, what this is all about. Coherence and the three minds. The fourth element around mindset that is super important for us to recognize in the design of our change and transformation is that identity trumps results. If we're thinking about the structure, if we're thinking about the what we do as part of change and transformation, that's fine, but don't finish there. This is what we need to do. This is what we need to achieve. This is the skill and the capability, or the new ways of working. That's all really powerful and really relevant, but it's incomplete. They are results. They are end results. What we want to do is we want to also understand the identity of who we are becoming. And who we are becoming is different because, number one, it captures hearts and minds, 3 brain states. Number two, it doesn't have an end point. It is a point of continued evolution and sustainability, which is really important for change and transformation. And number 3, it's who we are. So it really allows us to come on board with a journey. Now, the thing to be aware of here is if we are coaching and mentoring someone, or if we're in a change or transformation project and we are bringing people on that journey with us, what we tend to see in measures and results is we tend to see people focusing on how much do I need to do to get to there? And the result is there. So I'm gonna measure myself based on where I'm going. I'm gonna measure myself based on that end. For example, a runner, I'm going to measure myself based on running 10K. At the moment, I can't run anything. So I'm going to keep thinking about running 10K. That's quite tough, right? That's focusing our achievement and our measurement and our motivation as a human being on the end result. When we're focused on identity and who we're becoming, what we do is we do something slightly different. Instead of focusing on the end result, what you do is you think, what do I need to do to keep going? How can I keep going? What do I need to do to ensure that I don't stop? So even though you've got that who I am becoming, you just want to keep going. It's a completely different mindset. Yeah. So we want to be thinking about that. How do we keep people on the journey as opposed to focusing on them trying to motivate and reward themselves for just another step towards the end? That's really difficult for human beings. So we want to be thinking more about that piece. And what I've got here is something really, really simple. And boy, do we come across this a lot, because a lot of the work that we do with customers is about technological change, going from on-premise to cloud, bringing in a new technology. And here, when we're working with a technology team and there's some data people in there, and we're looking at what they want to do, and we're building, humanizing the transformation, and we're having a conversation with some people and they're saying, I want to become more skilled at using Power BI. Because I want to get into understanding how to do data visualization, and that's all great. But we don't want to say, okay, job done, let's design around that. What we want to do is we want to move into the invisible area. Who are you becoming as a result of that? Why? What's the why that will give you? It'll help me become more confident around data in order to la. So we really want to understand the identity of who we are becoming alongside that kind of skill and capability. So don't necessarily think that skill and capability the end game. There's more to do when we're humanizing transformation. And the final bit, which is really more about how we can help people, and this is probably a hack more than anything else, but how we can bring people on the journey is, I don't know whether you've seen Amy Cuddy's TED Talk. It is absolutely brilliant. Back in 2016, this lady, and the video is here, so if you'd like the slides, I'm more than happy to share them with you, just let me know. But Amy Cuddy talks about her own journey, her own experience, her own journey of adversity, and how she succeeded through adversity to actually get to a point of huge achievement. And the journey she talks about is an identity shift. The journey she talks about is, right at the start, she understood who she wanted to become. And what she did was she took elements of who she wanted to become and she started acting as if she was already that person, mindset. And she repeated, and she repeated, and she repeated. Fake it till you make it. If we understand the identity of who we want to become, and we start to bring tiny little elements of that into who we are now and act as if it's already here, and repeat and repeat and repeat, repetition is how our unconscious brain learns. I'm going to say that again. Repetition is how our unconscious brain learns. So if we want to support humanized transformation, if we want to support people to get into a different mindset and evolve their identity, repetition is really important, but not in terms of, we're forcing you to do this every day at 6 o'clock. That's not really what we're saying here. We're being ethical and empathetic with that individual's potentiality in the future and helping them to act as if it's already there now. So faking it until we make it is a really strong, powerful mechanism for moving from who I am now to who I want to become tomorrow. Super, super important. And if you haven't watched that TED Talk, please do, because it is absolutely fantastic. So this is a very important element of humanizing transformation, because the framework, the Dilyn Way framework for humanizing transformation is about identity, is about our modern mindsets and how we are able to understand who we are, who we are potentially wanting to be, and the journey for getting there at a leadership level, at a team departmental level, at an entire organizational level. And of course, as always, just to let you know, we have the practitioner certification option for anyone to investigate and explore. And also, one of the things that I say is this: if you're working in a project or program that is a transformation project or program, then it is really powerful and valuable to have at least one person within that team that understands or is a practitioner in the framework of, or in the world of humanizing transformation, because the wealth and value that they can bring to conversations, to design, delivery, measurement, evolution, etc., is huge. So if you'd like to know more about becoming a practitioner or seeding a practitioner within your change team or your project management team, then please do let me know. And I believe that we also have a Black Friday deal coming up, which is a week on Friday, on the 25th of November. So if there is a time to get on board with the certification, then the Black Friday deal will be coming up next week. So if you're on our mailing list, then you'll be able to find out what that is next week. So that's all going to be revealed by the team. As always, I want to say this to everybody. Humanizing transformation is so incredibly important. We ought to have a humanized, we ought to be bringing humanity into everything that we're doing around change and transformation. And part of that, the most important part of that, the first step of that is you. The first step of that is you. And as I say to everybody week in, week out, and and the openness that I have within my LinkedIn profile as well, is that if you want to understand a little bit more about you and your own humanity and where you're going or where you could potentially go, then please do reach out to me, and I'm more than happy to have a session with you with no obligation whatsoever. But it is really important for us to support individuals like you becoming the best that you can be as well. So if you'd like to take advantage of that, just let me know. So the summary for today. Summary number one, it's not about fixed or growth. It's about the triggers. Can we identify the triggers? And if we can identify the triggers en masse within a human system, boy, that's where we focus our design. That is where we focus our design. Modern mindset is inclusive, and equally it is uniquely personal. So if we are able to focus and understand and get more familiar with the 7 dimensions of modern mindset for ourselves and for others, focusing on strength first, the thing is, everybody is unique. No 2 individuals across those 7 dimensions will ever be the same. So bringing modern mindset into change and transformation is fantastic, because it allows everybody to celebrate their uniqueness. It's inclusive. That's so important. Start to think about practicing, or at least noticing, the idea of coherence or incoherence in your own practice, and maybe start to observe it in people around you. If you see, words coming out, but you get a sense of the feeling being different, there's incoherence. Are you seeing frustration? Are you seeing stuckness? That could be incoherence. So what might you be able to do about that? And of course, penultimate one, identity. So yes, we want to know what we need to do, what we want to do, but most importantly, alongside those results, we want to understand who we are becoming and who we could potentially be. That is the powerhouse that drives successful transformation. And we've got to remember as well that, transformation, the top reasons for failure, the top challenges for successful transformation projects and programs, all boil down to human leadership, culture, resistance, immunity. They all boil down to human. So if we are able to think about, mindset and some of these elements here today, we are on the journey to addressing those challenges and towards success. And finally, repetition in terms of understanding that future identity, and just starting in tiny little ways, starting to act as if we are already there. And it's the repeatability that is the secret. It's not the identifying the thing and just doing it once or every Saturday maybe, or maybe on a Wednesday, or I'll do it next week and not this week. It's the repeatability that embeds within our unconscious brain, because our unconscious brain learns through repeatability. So we've got to repeat it, and that is what will support that identity shift. And as James Clear says here, just in the closing quote, building the right identity instead of worrying about getting the right results is far more powerful when it comes to peak performance and supporting people on a journey of change. Banana skins, I've always got them, haven't I? And my first banana skin here has got a little bit of a typo, so if you want to hang on to these slides, then we'll make sure that typo is amended for you. Falling back into what rather than who. So that's the first banana skin, and it's really easy, especially when we're working with a team on a project and program, and we're trying to humanize that project and program. It's very easy to fall back into what, because of the strength of the voices around us. But try not. Keep bringing that who, making it too big, especially for the 5th point in terms of repeatability. If you make it too big, it's going to get hard. You won't be able to repeat. We've got to make it small enough that it's comfortable for everybody. That's what's so important. And also not celebrating or rewarding. It is important for us to celebrate and reward all of our own successes, because it does give us a dopamine rush, and it motivates us to keep going. We do have to think about motivation when it comes to humanizing transformation. And there we go. So where do you think about these 5 things? Where might you be able to pick up on one of these 5 things that you might not have heard of before, or you might have heard me speak about them in the past and you're thinking, actually, you know what, maybe a little bit different today, Mel, I quite like that, I might go and give it a go. So back to this slide. Think about these 5 areas of mindset that you might not have heard of before. Go and explore it, see what you can dig out. Or if it's something that you are quite familiar with, is there something that you can do to take action in your own practice, to deepen your understanding of it and start to think about your own transformational journey of change? There we go. So I'm going to stop sharing now, and I'm going to just bring everybody in the room and just see, are there any questions? I know we're a really small group today, but are there any questions that anybody's got? Are there any kind of, don't quite get that thing that you said, Mel, or can you just talk to me a little bit more about that? So open to the room.
Well, all I was going to say is, I think that first one is so true about the fixed versus growth mindset, and the fact that people are sort of somewhere on the scale. And I suppose I always think I have a growth mindset, but I think, as you say, certain things trigger you, don't they? And certain things you are more likely to have that fixed mindset, and you've got to make sure that you sort of are open to other people's ideas and try not to be too narrow in your thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. And Anna, that's so important, because especially in human conversation, that's where the tricky triggers happen. You're in a conversation and somebody says something, and it's the way that they say it, it's the way that they're standing, it's the words that they use, and you're triggered. And you can very potentially go downhill into a fixed mindset, which means that you don't get the benefit of what you might have wanted to achieve in that conversation or that meeting. The moment you become more consciously aware of these triggers, you can take a tiny little stop moment and put some little techniques and habits in there, just to be able to respond to it, to be able to recognize it and go, that's okay, I'm not going to go into fixed, I can keep going. So it's really important. For those triggers are far more important than just categorizing people into fixed and growth. You're absolutely right.
Yeah,
absolutely right. What about you, Caroline? Anything come up for you?
Yeah, I think what came out from that was, because we're going through a whole transformation in our organization, and I think the majority of our teams both are in this really fixed mindset, and it's challenging, because if you've got your whole environment that's got that fixed mindset and are more concerned with what the outcome will be, I guess it puts you, and you're in a growth mindset, or you're in a mindset where you want to stay open and focused. It's really tough. And so, the triggers, like you've mentioned, that's something that I'm thinking of now, is okay, how do I become more aware so that I'm not, shifting from a growth into a fixed mindset? Yeah.
And also, last week's session, we talked about the two biggest blockers of change within a human. And more often than not, people think that if somebody doesn't want change, so they've been triggered into a fixed mindset, you think it's resistance. So you use change management techniques to lower that resistance, but it's not always the case. And actually, we're finding in our work, Caroline, more and more, it's not resistance to change, it's immunity to change. And immunity to change, how you deal with that, is a very, very different technique and a very, very different journey. So understanding the difference between resistance to change and immunity to change might also help you in your particular situation at the moment. If you're feeling that there's a, you know, that people are being triggered into fixed mindset en masse, then I'd probably have a look at just seeing that it could well be some immunity to change going on there, and maybe doing some workshops around immunity to change with people. But in terms of your own triggers, what you can also do is you can use what's called the flow path. And we've got a nice little kind of flow path technique, and you can just start to journal and observe, but you don't analyze, you just journal and observe. That's all you need to do, is just journal and observe. And once you've got some observational data that, you know, is a good piece of data, then you can go back and see where are the patterns, where might that be coming from, what's my origin story, why is that something that's coming up for me, you know, because it could be something that is surface and or maybe recent, but it could be something that's all the way back to even, you know, before you started working. You know, you never know. So those two things might support you on that one as well.
Thank you.
No worries. Cool. Well, there we go. We are just coming up to the end of today's session. So thank you everybody for joining me today. And hopefully I'll be able to see everybody next week when we're talking about another little deep dive area of modern mindset and being able to humanize change and transformation. If you'd like to know more about anything today, then just let me know. We're going to send out to you all, if not today, tomorrow, as always, the replays. If you want to get hold of the slides, just let me know and respond to the email. Just reply to me and I will send you the slides as well. And if you'd like to just, you know, ask me anything, respond to that email and I will be there to respond to you too. So it doesn't go into a crazy box. It's me, because there's so many of these emails just don't go to the person, do they? And it just drives me nuts. Have a fantastic day, everybody. Keep well, and thank you for joining. And hopefully I will see you next week.
Thank you.
Bye.